Hi everyone. The central question I'm going to hopefully answer in this video is what exactly are the aspects of comedy? This is for A-level English Literature students studying Spec B, the comedy specification. So the aspects of comedy is the name of the overall module. So what is that exactly named after? And to put it simply, aspects means ingredients. So the same kind of ingredients of comedies that you see across multiple comedic texts, including sitcoms and plays. So there's a set number of them, and in order to get AO4 in both AS and A-level English Lit for this course, you need to be able to connect the genre of comedy to your texts. So AO4 is known as the connection AO, assessment objective. If you can connect your text to a wider genre, and A-level English Lit tends to be about genre, then you're going to get some marks for that, because it doesn't just show knowledge of the text, it also shows how they fit into a wider genre, which can include millions of texts and different kind of sitcoms and plays and poems and so on. The table here reminds you of the three things that make successful English literature students. The first is to obviously know the text really well. You can't write a good essay without knowing what you're talking about. And the examiner knows when you're confident with the text, because students that aren't confident with the text are very tentative in their analysis. They will not go into deeper meanings because they either don't know them or they are too scared to. So the most fundamental principal thing that you can do for A-level Lit is to know your text, and that might mean rereading them 2 or 3 times. But if you're serious about getting a good qualification, then that's something that you're going to do. Second is to know the comedy genre, so you need to be able to understand how the texts fit into the genre, and also to know the aspects of comedy, which I'm going to go through in a second. And the third thing is to put 1 and 2 together there and be able to write confident and perceptive essays. So to engage with the texts appropriately, as well as, in fact, for English, answering the question in the first place. Don't go off on tangents, and the way to do that is to keep repeating the key word or phrase from the question throughout your answer to show the examiner that you are in fact answering the question. So that makes your writing and your analysis relevant. So that is what makes good English literature students. So for this video, I'm going to be focused on number 2 here, all about the genre of comedy itself. Now, if you've watched my videos on Shrew or the comedy anthology, then some of these conventions might jump out at you already. And my students also study some other comedies as well, which I haven't done any videos on yet, actually. I might do in the future. So I'm going to give you a list of devices or ingredients of comedy, which are the aspects of comedy. So I'm hoping this video won't be too long. I'm going to go through this list and maybe explain some of them in a bit more detail, but hopefully this won't be too long. So comedy can often be about sex and innuendo and bawdiness and euphemisms. It can also challenge taboo, so issues that we often find controversial or difficult to talk about seriously. In a comedy, deaths and suffering are often prevented, and if they are referred to, then they're vaguely referred to. In a comedy, we don't want to see lots of bloodshed because that doesn't really make us laugh. Comedies can also sail a bit close to the wind and cut a bit close to the wire. Comedians get themselves into a bit of trouble sometimes by a particular joke because people say that it was too controversial and not funny. So sometimes comedy can be quite dark and it can have some serious undercurrents in it. The common aspect of comedy is marriage and courtship, or the desire to be in a relationship with somebody else, which is synonymous with giving that person happiness and a sense of togetherness. There can be a large amount of comic confusion in comedy because of disguise, trickery and deception, characters lying and creating complex schemes for a particular reason. Comedies tend to have a happy resolution, although it's not always as simple as that because some endings are happier than others. And there tends to be in comedy a large degree of togetherness and unity. Characters that are friends, characters that are sharing the same time and place, and the company element, not a lot of loneliness in in comedies, not a lot of isolation. There tends to be a lot of reconciliation and forgiveness, so even if characters have lied and deceived each other, there tends to be no consequence to that. Changes in fortune are advantageous, so they gain something in the play or the text rather than lose something. And if you are going to use comedy to ridicule characters to get them drunk, might be advantageous as well, because with drunkenness you have unpredictability of behaviour and the loss of inhibitions. And if you are encouraging your audience and reader to finger point and laugh at people, to get them drunk might be useful. Other aspects of comedy include irrational, out-of-control behaviour, a degree of dysfunctionality, whether that be an uncultivated lower-class character or a dysfunctional relationship or marriage. Gullibility, so characters that believe something too quickly, and therefore they make themselves ideal targets for pranks. Comedy can often focus on foolishness and buffoonery and human shortcomings or foibles. It's about saying that we're all the same, really, that we can all make the same errors, we all suffer the same embarrassment sometimes. Comedy can also become quite absurd or surreal or supernatural, so in some texts there might be some magic realism, or there might be something that's words like wonder or miracle, suggesting that there's a supernatural element to it. Characters can also be kind of entrenched in a degree of rivalry, characters that don't like each other. Sometimes that's verbalized, sometimes it isn't, so sometimes it stays beneath the surface and they have to squirm in somebody else's company. Characters can posture, they can be arrogant, and they can be egotistical and boasting. The archetypal snob, essentially. You can have comic villains and archetypal fool characters who are there for comic relief. I've done a separate video on archetypal fools recently. Characters that are there to keep us laughing in moments of seriousness, perhaps, for comic relief. Comedy can also break formality and serious traditions or seriousness. For example, you might have a character that falls in a grave at a funeral, or a character that trips over their wedding dress in a wedding or a marriage ceremony. So look out for how writers will subvert formal occasions for laughs. Characters can engage in witty repartee and wordplay, so this witty kind of back and forth and a degree of feistiness in their dialogue. There can be triviality. That's true, for example, in the case of The Importance of Being Earnest. There's a degree of triviality, making big issues seem much smaller, trivializing them. And there can also be a degree of physical humour, slapstick, and the way in which characters move and act physically in relation to other characters as well. And the final slide, comedy can also be farcical, so situations that are improbable or wouldn't necessarily happen in real life. So, for example, with Shrew, you've got 6 sets of disguise there, which is unusual in life. Sometimes the audience is included and are spoken directly, so the fourth wall is broken. So comedy makes better use of the audience, and that's because comedy was always about improvisation. Lots of comedians, for example, improvise by using the audience. Characters can swear using formal language or colloquialisms as well. There could be jokes and pranks. I quite like the word clowning, which harks back to the old-fashioned kind of clowns and gestures in stage plays. This idea of fooling around with jokes and pranks and deception. Complex plotting, which can be quite artisan and quite skillful to do, quite resourceful to do, and opportunistic. You have music, dancing, and a sense of celebration. A degree of chaos and disorder and rule breaking, but that's okay and almost kind of encouraged if you think of the carnivalesque theory, the idea of disorder and revelry. In comedy, chaos can create a sense of disequilibrium, so rocking the boat and creating a sense of temporary chaos before things return back to normal at the end. Again, I've done a separate video on disequilibrium as well. Pretentiousness and snobbery, you're going to get characters that think they're better than other people, and those people are mocked often. uncultivated and unrefined behaviour, for example, from a lower class character, such as Christopher Sly, or a servant character. Comedy can also focus on bodily functions, nudity, and sex, and this idea that we're all the same. So let's laugh at that. Comedy can also be about renewal and regeneration. So there is a renewing force in comedy. The act of laughing about it creates catharsis, and it makes us feel better and renewed. And also that happens with the idea of the happy ever after as well. The idea of everything that's gone before, it doesn't matter because everything is starting afresh. And finally, comedy is all about universality of mankind. The idea being that we're all the same. We all have flaws, we all have shortcomings, we've all had embarrassing moments in our lives. Let's laugh about it rather than worry about it. So when you hear the term aspects of comedy, that's what they mean. All of these common ingredients that we see across multiple comedic texts, which you need to be aware of in your comedy paper, because you are connecting the text to this genre. So you are going to be commenting on some of these aspects that you notice in an extract or which you notice in your text in answer to a general essay question. Okay, so that is the answer to the question, what are the aspects of comedy? All of those things that I've gone through in this video. Thank you.